Welcome to another edition of the Backyard Professor podcast series, where I get to do all the talking and you get to do all the listening and the learning. I'm coming at you on a blistering hot Idaho day. I'm Kerry Shirts, the Backyard Professor. Well, it's in the mid-90s right now, and for Idaho, that's pretty toasty. I'm going up into the Grays Lake wilderness area here in Idaho, just enjoying the gorgeous sunny day and the fabulous cumulonimbus clouds on the horizon. They're just gigantically beautiful. I've oil painted a bit off and on through my life, and the one thing oil painting did for me was learn to appreciate the beauty of clouds and the mountains and the rivers and the creeks and the wildlife. It's fabulous out here. I've run across an author whom I've read a few individual selections of, but I finally gotten Alan Segal's book, Paul the Convert. I've read a couple of his other individual articles. I know he's got a book, The Two Powers in Heaven, which I haven't got yet. I'm keeping my eyes peeled for it, but I've been analyzing his book, Paul the Convert, and he has a very nifty thesis that I want to share with you in case you haven't read it. And if you have read it, I've got some other authors and different selections that I want to share with you. I think Alan Segal is one of the very, very good biblical scholars in our world right now. A pleasure to read his materials. He's very careful. I believe he is a Jewish scholar, and his insights into the New Testament as a Jewish scholar, into the New Testament personalities, is extremely fun to analyze and see. You can see the difference between his type of exegetical approach to the Scriptures as opposed to, say, a Christian or even a Mormon scholar. I think this is invaluable to get other viewpoints, to get other different types of analysis. Now, he has a very excellent individual selection in James Charlesworth's very excellent book, Jesus and the Dead Sea Scrolls. This is a double-day book. It was published in the 1990s. Segal's book on Paul the Convert, I believe, is the 1990s book also. I went to my used bookstore here in Idaho and got it for a good trade. The bookstore owner told me it's a sensational read. Now, of course, I'm getting more and more interested in the life of St. Paul because of the enormously fascinating and controversial researches of Robert Eisenman in his book, James, the Brother of Jesus, and he's got a new book, The New Testament Code. His writing is a little bit obtuse. It's too bad. It's so unfortunate. He needs a good editor because he has some very interesting ideas, even though he is the lone wolf against the wolf pack at this point. Although Jeffrey L. Boots, and now I just read last night Herschel Shanks and Ben Witherington III's book, The Brother of the Lord, The Brother of Jesus, and they are discussing the James ossuary that was found back in 2001. And boy, that made international world headlines there for a while. And unfortunately, the morons who shipped it broke it. Oh my heavens. The ossuary itself is genuine. The question is the inscription. Shanks and Witherington kind of take a positive assessment of it, and after analyzing the various pros and cons and discussing various scholarly ideas on it, they have a tendency to accept it as genuine. Robert Eisenman immediately proclaimed it false, fake, phony, a forgery. So the controversy continues, but Witherington's contribution to the Shanks-Witherington book is very good because it's a very excellent historical overview about James and his influence in the early church and who he is and so on and so forth. And of course, Eisenman's big thesis is that James the Just, the brother of the Lord, is the teacher of righteousness, the Moreh Hasidic of the Dead Sea Scrolls, and the liar from the Dead Sea Scrolls point of view is the Apostle Paul. Now, we are so used to thinking in terms of the orthodox established canonical New Testament at this point that Paul should always be viewed as one of the good guys, but we actually do potentially have another point of view from the other side of Paul and the huge early Christian controversy that has been covered up, according to Boots and Eisenman, and now several others are getting on this bandwagon about James, Richard Bauckham and various other scholars, James Painter and various other different scholars, James Dunn, on this idea that James was the successor of the Lord, and as such he retained adherence to the law of Moses, strictly so. And this idea of retaining the Jewish aspect of the gospel, Christ came as the Messiah of the Jews, and he was also an observant Jew. And so Paul becomes the apostate from this point of view. It is a remarkable portrait. It is a very interesting look into this from another side's point of view, and I think that's extremely interesting. So in the process of analyzing the Apostle Paul from both the Christian outlook, our outlook, as we have been handed down in the Western Christian tradition, and now the Jewish viewpoint is coming out much stronger than it has, say, for the last 2 millennia. Very, very interesting ideas to see the actual combatants in early Christianity being Paul the apostle of all people, and James the just, the leader of Jerusalem Christianity, centered there at Jerusalem until his martyrdom in 62. And of course Eusebius says that because, and Eusebius is using the early Christian father Hegesippus, his writings, he says that because the Jews martyred James the Just, that's the reason Jerusalem fell. And some of the early church fathers, they said, no, it wasn't because James was killed, it was because Jesus was crucified. And so there's a big controversy there in early Christianity as well. It's all very fascinating, and I do want to do some more podcasts on this issue of James versus Paul, and so on and so forth. Before I do, as kind of a background to this, I think Alan Segal here, not so far as I know, he's not related to Steven Seagal. He makes good martial arts movies. It's all Hollywood, though. You know, after studying the martial arts, it completely ruined the movies for me. They're all Hollywooded up. I mean, that's not the way to fight. It looks cool for these high flying kicks and all that, but you know, it's completely fake. There's my aside for the day. So the analysis of Alan Segal on the Apostle Paul is really interesting because Segal brings out this concept that Paul can be best understood, his conversion experience on the Damascus Road, this enormous event that completely transformed Paul, changed him 180 degrees different, from a persecutor of Christianity into one of its ardent defenders, although it's from his point of view of being saved through the grace of Christ, not having to be slaves to the law. The law Paul is talking about is the law of Moses. And of course this is diametrically opposite of the book of James in the New Testament. This is why works versus grace, so on and so forth.